Sure.
Okay. What's happening, man?
Good class today, man.
Good class today.
Yeah.
Good class. We were talking about the how cool it is to see an academy grow, and especially when you have like a group of guys. Like we had like 7 people in this morning, all brand new, and one of the brand new guys got his first stripe today. And it's so cool because like our other academy has been open for 8 years now, right? Phillips Academy has been open for a year, and it's always cool to see like that growth of, especially when it's truly somebody that comes to you and says, "I don't know anything," and they start making progress, and then next thing you know, is they start surprising you where they're doing good posture, passing, a sweep that they're going for, you know.
Yeah.
So that's always exciting, man. It's I think that growth, it's less obvious once you start going into like purple, brown, and black. You know, the growth is it's not as drastic as when you're a white belt, maybe a blue belt too, where all of a sudden like techniques are happening, sequences, and it goes from like I didn't know this last week to like now I'm doing this.
Yeah.
You know.
Or just you see their bodies. You know what I mean? Like, all right, we're gonna shrimp, and just seeing someone shrimp for the first time. If you've been here for a while, you know you're almost like, man, that looks. Not only does that look awkward, but that looks painful.
Right.
But then a month later, they're shrimping, and it looks just like everyone else.
And the flow and yeah.
So it's cool to see, but it's also cool to see people taking ownership when the school starts. Like they grow with the school rather than someone comes in and the school's been established for 8 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those people are kind of a part of that history. They're the first ones who signed up. They're the first ones
to see the academy grow,
yeah.
right? To see something small, like. But this is 4 or 5 times the size of our first academy because we were not prepared to open the first academy, But now this one, we obviously there was a vision behind it, so we opened it. But to them, it'll still be their small academy.
Yeah. Yep.
I remember the academy was so small, and now it's like the other one is like 5,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Bathrooms and showers and stuff.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, it's like when you first have your little family and you're living in a 1-bedroom apartment, right? And it was like cozy, and then as the house grows, you know what I mean, there's more parts of the room, people go into there. It's still the same thing, but when you're in a small space the size of a closet, you know what I mean, it was
right.
That first place was pretty small, but it's cool seeing big class for such a new school.
Right. So, no, it's phenomenal. It's good growth, man. So but you were here yesterday, man. We were talking about the relationship between parents, coaches, and kids. And I think you got to see kind of what I was talking about, where one of the hardest things to do as a coach is establish a relationship. Number one, with a kid, but also the hardest part is to establish a relationship with the parents. The parents need to understand that both of us cannot be the disciplinary in that relationship. Now you're sharing custody with the kid.
Yeah.
And it's cool because the parents trust you with their kid. They're coming to you and they're pretty much you're teaching them those important life lessons. Earning something, working hard towards something, starting to develop discipline, not quitting. Starting to be a man.
Yeah.
Or starting to be not a little girl. Starting to grow into yes, you got hit in the nose, but you can fight through that, and let's go through that. But the hardest thing is to talk to the parents, or not even talk to the parents, but get the parents to understand that when your son is struggling, I don't need you yelling from the sidelines. I need you, as frustrating as it might be, I need you to let me develop that relationship with your son where when he's struggling, he's not paying attention. I'm the one that needs to be able to recapture his attention and still discipline and get him to do the drill the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
So that's always hard, man. And I it's funny because we were having that conversation, and then you saw the parent that was getting frustrated with the kids, and there's a lot of tricks that we do as coaches, but that's a trick, man.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, and I think we were talking about it yesterday. It happens to me a lot when I coach football. And you might have some parents that played, a little bit of high school or not. But it's so distracting, not only to me as a coach, but to the kid when I'm trying to teach them a technique and you're yelling at them and you as a parent, don't necessarily understand what I'm trying to teach them and why I'm trying to teach it. And so now they're distracted by you, right? Because mentally they want to please their parent, but they also want to please their coach. So, they're trying to listen to what we're teaching them, but then they're worried about what you're thinking. And it happens to little Ruben. Sometimes we'll leave class and he'll say, "Did I do good?" And I'm like, "Do you feel like you do good? Because you're not at class or practice to please me. You're there to get better than you were yesterday." And I have to keep reminding him that, but it's distracting to kids, man. And I think in this sport, what you might think is something easy to do, like, why don't you he's laying on top of you, just get out of there.
Yeah.
Bro, come on the mat and just try to understand.
Dude, so those are, yeah.
Looks.
So now you're starting to talk about those parents where they come in and we were having an issue with a kid he just turned 5. He just turned 5 years old. And he's doing really good. He did a tournament, and he's been 5 years old for all of like 2 months. Mm-hmm. So he gets thrown into this bracket where he's the youngest and the smallest. And he actually put one of the older 5-year-old kids. He put him on his butt. He wrestled him, put him on his butt, kept fighting. Eventually lost the fight, but you have to appreciate the fact that this kid just turned 5, and he's by far the smallest. Mm-hmm. And you can tell where his brain is not mature yet. You can see the tenderness in his body.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because like you overhear the parents, whether they're from different academies and stuff, and they start getting mad at their kid, and they're like, "Well, it's just hard to see him struggle because both of us are very competitive." And then you look at the parents and you're like, competitive at what? Eating?
Yeah.
Because if it's competitive eating, I believe you. Other than that, you haven't competed in shit in your life.
Or competitive in the corporate arena.
Right.
Because that
very fucking different.
Yeah.
Very fucking different, man. And that's so I was talking to one of the parents and it wasn't this other kid, it was some other kid that we were talking about. And I was I'd love to talk to the parents because I feel like sometimes they don't grasp what their kids are doing, which is a phenomenal thing. Jiu-jitsu is very unforgiving and challenging and very rewarding, but also there's so many things to learn. It's not just technique that you learn, it's you have to rewire your brain. So I was talking to his parents of this other 5-year-old kid, and one of the things I put into context for them was the newness, how new the life of their son is. Mm-hmm. This other kid just turned 5, right? Mm-hmm. So let's think about this. 5. 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, he was soling himself. He had so little control of his body mechanics that he was like, something in my path,
Yeah.
And then a year before that, his life on this planet is so new that he is completely unconscious. You're talking about a 2-year-old kid that is not conscious. He's still responding at a primal level to things. It hurts. I cry. You do something, you laugh, so I'm gonna respond to that by laughing. There's not intelligent, intelligent response there. And it's a terrible too, you know. So to go from birth to the terrible 2 to the 3.5, where they just kind of like he still poops a little in the pants, you know. To now, when you put him in jiu-jitsu at 4.5, and 6 months later, you want him to have a sense of earning things or be super competitive and win his matches and stuff. That's not how it works, man.
No.
That's not how it works. What works is your son at that age is a puppy. And puppies' mindset works on pleasing their owners. You know, that's what puppies do. That's their entire mindset. Their entire mindset is about making your owner happy. A kid, everything he does is he looks, you're happy. Okay, cool. I'm going to keep doing that. You're not happy. Shit, I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
You know, that's exactly what it is, man. So it's important for parents, man, to understand, like, you know, like I heard this conversation, or I had this conversation with one of the parents where they were complaining about their 5-year-old kid not having worked to earn anything in their life.
They're 5. They don't need it.
Right?
You're their fucking parent, man.
Right.
They don't need to earn anything in their life.
Not yet.
No.
You're talking about the concept of earning, so working hard to earn something in their life is, you're talking about, number one, you're talking about when you start playing a competitive sport later in life. You're talking about like the early teens, mid-teens. That's when that concept of work ethic starts to be developed. But at 5 years old, man, just let the kid be a kid. You know,
Yeah.
it's if they're having fun and they feel that the parent is happy with their work, they'll continue to do it. You
Yeah.
know, it's our job as the coaches to say, you did good, you didn't do so good. We can do that better.
Yeah.
And then it's your job as a parent to go, uh, I'm happy with your effort, and that's it. And it's your job as a parent also to get the kid, like, this is where the work ethic starts coming in, where I don't want to go. Well, guess what? You're going. You know?
Yeah.
It's at that point the kids have zero input. I'm not telling you put them in a sport or an activity where the kid is miserable and crying every single day. But you put them in wrestling, you put them in swimming, you put them in jiu-jitsu, you put them in wrestling, just because they don't want to go and they don't want to work hard that day. That's not a reason.
Yeah.
You know, like that we're gonna go.
Yeah.
You
Consistency.
know, consistency,
discipline.
and that's your job as a parent, man. That's your job. It's like, no, you don't get to not go just because you don't feel like working hard today.
Yeah.
You know,
And I'd like to add that job number one as a parent is to know your fucking role.
right?
Like don't bring if you think that you are the subject matter expert, don't bring your kid to me.
You coach it.
You coach him. You
Yeah.
coach him at football. You coach him at whatever. I don't take little Ruben into that wrestling room where there's 3-4 time state champions, college wrestlers, and do a job I know nothing about.
Right.
I take him to them because they are the subject matter expert. Here's my son. I trust you with your. I'm gonna sit back here and I'm just gonna enjoy it. Most of the time I'm stretching, doing yoga. I'm watching because I'm learning stuff. Right. I could use that on the jiu-jitsu mats. Same thing here. If they bring them to us, your job is to get them here. Just get them here. I don't care if you go on Instagram. I don't care if you bring a book. I don't care if you knit. Just trust that we're gonna
Right.
do what we're gonna do with them,
Yeah.
and that we've put in the time to teach them how to shrimp,
Right.
how to do a technique.
And it shows, man. I think for the most part, I think parents do eventually figure it out. Like, we just had there was this phenomenal tournament put on last weekend. It was what's it called? The Old Pueblo Jiu-Jitsu Open.
Yeah.
It was a great tournament. It was put on by Enrique from Gracie Baja. And it was I think it's their second or their third one. But it was very well run. It was very well run. And I liked it because there was a lot of kids that had that opportunity to get their first jiu-jitsu tournament under their belt without having to spend $80-$90 a drive to Phoenix, which is a hit on their parents. It's something local. You're here in town. You have more ability to bring your loved ones to watch you compete. But the tournament was phenomenal, man, and I really enjoyed the ability to interact with other members of the jiu-jitsu community. It's dude, everybody was having fun, dude. Everybody was having fun and interacting and competing with one another. But it was a really good atmosphere. It was a really good atmosphere. I was disappointed at the last one because there was an issue with a super fight that they had, where the two camps ended up acting completely ghetto, like getting on the mat.
Years, you mean?
Yeah, getting on the mat and arguing with the ref and stuff like that. It's trying to intimidate one of the refs and stuff. And I don't think it was the Opel. I think it was a Fuji that they put together.
Yeah.
And it was disappointing, man, because I feel that there's, especially at the local level, this is the first time that we have an opportunity to introduce jiu-jitsu to the masses. This is where I get to invite my friends that don't know anything about jiu-jitsu, and they get to watch, me compete, like if I'm one of the younger belts, or they get, or I have a parent that this is the first time they're going to have their son compete or their daughter compete, and they get to see that kind of behavior, man. I was very disappointed. But at the same time, it was the two camps that if somebody was going to act that way, you knew which two camps were going to be, And then it happened the same thing this year, man. It was like everybody's great. There were some issues with refereeing, but even in the way certain people were protesting, I'll mention it, man. Even, for example, Mark Monaco from the UFC, he got screwed over. His one of his fighters was screwed over in a ruling, and even the way he protested was phenomenal, man. He was clearly pissed. He voiced his opinion and he let it go after that. David Riley from the UFC got screwed over with one of his fighters. There was this
Undisputed, right?
from Undisputed. His fighters got a phantom was a victim of a Brazilian tap. Where his guy or girl, I forget what it is, has a submission. The opponent goes, and then the person starts letting go, and then when they realize that the referee doesn't acknowledge that as a tap, instructs him to keep fighting. Dude, David, he was like, that was a tap. And then when the referee just said, well, I'm not acknowledging, keep fighting, David again expressed his opinion and let it go. There was no scene. There was no reason to be rude or anything like that. Later on, with both of these gentlemen, there was a conversation with people that were running the fight, and they were like, hey, that was wrong. Let's make sure that doesn't happen in the future.
Yeah.
And those conversations are important to have. But same thing. It's like, I don't need to tell you who, but there's this camp that where we're talking shit, and they were being rude, and they were being obnoxious, and I call it like, I was trying to describe their behavior, man, because you and I were talking about it, how they especially specifically this guy, man, he tries to, and I think it's a very important thing to recognize when you have somebody like that, whether it's in your job, whether it's in your life, in one way or another. But the best way I could describe it was a energy vampire. Somebody that tries to feed off of your energy and make you feel or be somebody that you're not,
Yeah.
And the best way to deal with that, man, is to recognize where you at, and to recognize what they're trying to do,
Yeah.
And if I'm at this tournament where I have parents that are watching my behavior as a coach, which I posted that on Instagram, dude. Somebody that I don't know sent us a message and I said, I saw you guys at the tournament. I, number one, love the way you guys behaved. I love the way you guys interacted, and I love the way you guys fought. I want to be part of that. That's actually on the text. I want to be part of that. And I could tell you, I could mention 20 different coaches throughout Tucson that are phenomenal human beings that get those text messages.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't get those text messages. Those other people wouldn't get those text messages if we allow there's energy vampires, man, to latch onto you and to respond to that.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about it yesterday, and the level of your maturity, and I mean, I'm my maturity too, but I've always kind of took a stance, especially when it comes to people like that, and that guy specifically. I just feel like someone needs to hit them direct, like literally hit them, like they just need to get a good street ass whooping. Like, stop acting like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I think at this point in our life, and what we're trying to show and what we're trying to be is something better than that. And I think the way you conducted yourself is honorable and shows the type of leader and person you are. But it's one of those things where that dude, that dude's just miserable. And there are those people throughout life that are just miserable, and they'll do anything, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. They'll do whatever they have to do to bring people down to their level. So
right. What's to me the tragedy of it all. There's two things. Number one, I don't want anybody in their life to go through life the way this guy is, where he goes out of his way to try to humiliate people. And it's one of the reasons that this person and I were started having problems back in the day, is because I think I might have been like a white belt or a blue belt, and I was like, dude, you're a bully. Like the way I saw him treat other people, and he took it as a joke, but I was kind of joking, but at the same time pointed it out, like, that's bullish behavior, man. But to me, the tragedy of it all is that this involves jiu-jitsu, that it involves jiu-jitsu, and if we cannot respect one another and act at a better caliber as human beings, and we are trying to represent jiu-jitsu, it's our jiu-jitsu is losing the value. Doesn't matter if you can throw arm bars or not. It doesn't matter what you've done in your career. It's you're losing the core essence of jiu-jitsu. You're doing something else that is not jiu-jitsu anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and it's one of those things where it's you know, I hear a lot of people say, write your obituary. Like, if you ever want a realization about who you are as a person, write your obituary about what everyone's going to say about you when you're dead.
Have you seen that in Japan? They do that.
No,
it's an exercise, man.
Oh, is it?
Dude, it's so freaky. I think I was reading that something like that. They actually said that Anthony Bourdain might have done something like that a few months before his death. But in Japan, there's this group exercise where you actually go in a coffin and they bring a picture of you, and then they bring people that know you, and then they freely get to express themselves as to what they feel about you. You know, like, this person passed away, and I never got to say this to them, or I wish they had done this in their life better. And you were inside the coffin, and dude, this people, like, at the end of the exercise, I think people get like 20 minutes, you know, session, and they step out of the coffin and they're in tears, man. They're in tears because that's your obituary, like you said. Like, it's your body of work. Your story is what you leave behind. Yeah, it's what you leave behind, man. Not your money, not your medals, not this, not that, you know. And I think that's one of the things that like guys like Marcelo Garcia, like Frangina, that if you ask somebody to give their opinion about them, like you just mentioned Marcelo Garcia, this and that, one of the first thing that gets mentioned is like what great human beings they are. Like, they're like, man, that guy is phenomenal. Oh, he's also a fucking monster in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, he's a killer on the mat, but outside he'll give you anything.
Dude, you know, but the first thing that gets mentioned is the quality of the human beings that they are, and then the medals, you know. Yeah. And I think that's something that we need to keep in mind, man. That's what you're leaving behind, you know. So, let's, you know, I want the community, man, to kind of like buckle down, man, and just stay focused on jiu-jitsu, man. We're about to start teaching jiu-jitsu at a certain venue that I'm very excited about. I can't say anything, but it expands our ability to touch people through jiu-jitsu at the jiu-jitsu community. And one of the things that I was talking when it came down to propose this program was what I feel jiu-jitsu brings to a community, what it does to the person, and but none of that happens if we're not good human beings. I'm not speaking about being flawless. We all have our problems, man. We all have our weaknesses, our problems. We've all wronged somebody, knowing that we're doing it, knowing that we're doing wrong. But it's your body of work, you know. It's if outside of those flaws you try to overcome them, and you try to keep doing better, and you try to leave this world better, as long as you're conscious about what you're doing wrong and you go back to try to right those, you know, that's the whole point of this, man. You know, that's the whole point of jiu-jitsu, and I think that's what jiu-jitsu does to a city, you know. That's also what I'm excited about, like, doing the Last Warrior Standing is, I want to treat athletes like athletes. I want to give them the opportunity to make a living out of that. And as the tournament grows, as our venue grows, the checks keep getting better. The checks keep getting better. Better fights start coming in. Like, you and I were talking about the card for this weekend, and there's not a single weak fight in there.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
I'm excited, man. I'm excited. This is going to be a phenomenal thing. I'm excited. There's a lot of fighters that I'm excited to see. I know that a lot of those guys are going to put on a great show. But then again, it's like, what I'm excited about is that I have the opportunity to start changing the way jiu-jitsu is, because for the longest time, and this is where I also feel bad about, like, the forefathers of jiu-jitsu, right? That they came and went in their careers and they never had the opportunity to do super fights and make money individually like this. It's not till like within the last 7 years that the super fights have started to happen, where they're making money. You know, that's what I'm excited about, to be able to bring that to Tucson and to Arizona in general in the future. Yeah, you know,
and I think it's only going to up the level of jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing but good that's going to come from jiu-jitsu. It's exciting to see. It's exciting to see the kids who now have grown up in it since they were small. You know, as they start progressing, they start getting into their careers in jiu-jitsu. I don't know, man. I'm kind of envious of them kind of going through it, you know, because it's like, it's a cool spot to be in right now.
Yeah, we kind of missed that too. Yeah. We missed that shot, but it's cool, man. Like, these kids will have that opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and we get to watch them and enjoy great jiu-jitsu in the process, and see it evolve and see them successful too. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. I'm excited. Yeah, that's so cool. But Dude, so your son, because we were talking about the influence of other sports in jiu-jitsu, and we are talking about why you have to wrestle.
Yeah.
You know, it's not if you should wrestle. Like if you're a jiu-jitsu guy and you're thinking about should I do wrestling, especially a kid, it's you have to.
Yeah.
You have to. Not to say that wrestling is not very technique rich, which it is, but a lot of it is very driven, and it's based on the concept of not accepting and making things happen by trying hard over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's something that puts a different kind of drive where no other sport puts that into somebody. Doesn't build a character like jiu-jitsu, you know, or like wrestling. And there's a huge difference. You can see that where guys that come from a wrestling background and they do jiu-jitsu now, and they're able to transfer that mindset, that work ethic into jiu-jitsu. Those guys are a nightmare to roll with.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
So I like with my kids, man. I put them in wrestling not to be wrestling champions, not to be state champions or anything like that, but to teach them that do not accept.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
And this is something that later on we started preaching in our academy. Is we've had entire practices that are devoted around the concept of not accepting, like not accepting a sweep, not accepting a takedown, not accepting a submission.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah.
And how do you build that? There's no, just the simple fact that in wrestling you can start with you standing, somebody already has grips on your legs, and you're about to go, and when the whistle blows, you're gonna have to figure out a way of not getting taken down. You already started in the worst case scenario. The only thing that stops the takedown, it's your willingness and your drive and your desire to not accept a negative outcome.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. So little Ruben, he was, and I took a picture with Brenda yesterday. I wish I would have posted the side by side of when he got his first stripe, how small he was, because he was right by Brenda.
Yeah.
And now he's like up to her, I don't know, like lower chest probably.
Yeah.
She's kind of bending down. But he was 4. He was literally like fresh 4. And I think he was kind of different in the sense where he grew up around the boxing gym, and I had him playing when he was smaller in the gym. But what he's learned in jiu-jitsu, he's learned his body, and he's learned how to move, and he's dynamic, because they'll start doing drills, and at wrestling they're doing their warm-up drills and they're doing cartwheels, and he's hitting one-handed cartwheels. But that's from
so
jiu-jitsu.
crazy, man.
You know what I mean? So he developed that base, and even just I will say, man, he has amazing hips. Jiu-jitsu. So now it helps him in wrestling. If he's in a bad position, he's wiggling his hips out. Things that maybe if kids have never done jiu-jitsu, they haven't gotten wrestling. So
right.
Like you said, you're not necessarily saying that one's superior than the other, but when you get both of them and you get a foundation of both of them, it's amazing. So he came in yesterday, and he's been a pretty chill, which I guess is good for jiu-jitsu, right? He's chill, but there's times where I'm like, man, and in my head, again, I don't tell him this, or I'm not yelling this, I'm like, man, push the pace on that dude. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
just don't accept it. Like, just don't fall.
But
right?
now
Now
he's got that from wrestling where
Yeah.
he is pushing the entire time.
Yep. He's aggressive.
Pushing
he's
that
mean,
time.
Every single inch is earned, and he's fighting for it, and I like that. And I think the wrestling he's learning is at a great level, and those coaches are doing a great job with him. But I think it's one of those things where if you want to be at that next level, I mean, we talk about the Buchechas. He has some legit wrestling. Gavao, probably, I don't know, would you say he has some of the best wrestling jiu-jitsu?
Easily, yeah.
Cyborg, right? They bring in all these top-notch wrestlers, and I think it's not just, you just can't get by being just a jiu-jitsu fighter. You got to cross-train in those things, and so it's cool to see, and it's cool to see him progress and the work he's putting in, and just the grind that they go in there, man. Their warm-ups, their practices, their drilling.
Their warm-ups are the workouts.
Yeah, they're
sometimes for like other sports.
Yeah.
Like you're like, fuck man, we're an hour into this wrestling practice and it's been like non-stop cardio.
Yeah, and just the drilling, it's just like bam, 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 and
Dude, so when I used to wrestle, again, we're coming from like a Mexican, mother or family, on the Mexican diet. I would struggle to make 190 pounds. And I was a big kid, but struggled to make 190 pounds. But dude, my mom was making me like tuna empanadas, which is come on, dog. You know, give me, why are you feeding me this? You know.
Yeah.
But the way my mom looked at it was like, it's tuna. It's healthy. Yeah, but it's
fish.
wrapped. Yeah, but it's wrapped in 2 layers
Of cake.
and then it's deep fried. And then you're feeding me that.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I remember like those wrestling workouts where he was like, shit, man, we've been running for an hour.
Yeah.
You know, in this little room with no windows.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, fuck, man. You know, what do? Do you quit? Do you slow down? You know, you can't. You got to keep going, man.
So I remember, I think my uncle, he wrestled at Choya, and he did really, really well. So he kind of grew up wrestling, teaching me wrestling. But I got into 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and that's where I met Bronson. And I remember practices, man, where it was fun, but I think that was a great foundation into the rest of my life, right? Because we're grinding, me and him are pushing each other.
So you knew Bronson since back then?
Yeah, we went to junior high together.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, we were since then we would find each other in the wrestling room and we'd partner up and we practice. And then one day he'd get the best of me, one day I'd get the best of him. But it was just this kind of connection as training partners that we had together, and that you sometimes get here in jiu-jitsu. You know, you seek out someone, you're like, man, I like drilling with him because he's not gonna be all, you know what I mean? But he's gonna work good. I know that if he sees me doing something wrong, he'll help me adjust or whatever. Yeah. But it was 7th, 8th grade, and Troy would send in their wrestling coaches to start recruiting guys, and I think that was a great foundation for how aggressive I was going to be throughout my life, right? Because I wrestled half of my freshman year and then just played football, but I think that still carried on into football, that carried on into boxing, and I'd like to say it carries on here, whether I'm at that level of whoever I'm fighting, or they're way better than me, I'm gonna fight to not let something happen.
And see, Bronson's a good example, man, of what wrestling does, but it also, I think it's like he's one of those anomalies, because a lot of people, when you watch a guy, there's always like one guy in practice that, not negatively speaking, but he is just using strength the whole time with good technique, but he is pushing and he is flexing and he's using a ton of strength, which is what Bronson does. And the question is usually, should I be using strength throughout my entire role? And I think back in the day, the answer was like, no, you shouldn't use strength throughout your entire role. You should focus more on technique. Yeah. Which technique conquers all. Technique is the foundation of jiu-jitsu. But when both of us know the same, we're the same weight, we're the same size, we have the same technique, what's going to make the difference? Strength and conditioning. And Bronson is one of those guys that, for those of you guys that are out there that are trying to figure out, should I be using strength the entire role? The answer is, if you can keep up.
If your
conditioning allows it. Yeah. So like this dude will run. We've done like our rolls where he is rolling with the same level of strength and the same level of tenacity from the first roll to the 15 roll. Like he's still sprawling and brawling and gripping and moving and hip cutting, and hip switching and knee cutting and stuff. So it's if you're one of those guys or you're able to build up your conditioning to that level, then yeah, by all means. Yeah. If you're not, then no, focus on learning how to control the body of your opponent. Hoyce Gracie would fight hour-long fights, but he didn't have the strength. But what he had was a technique. He controlled people, those are the two sides of the spectrum, right? You have the guy that is a Bronson, you have the guy that's like Hoyce, that doesn't. It's not a physical specimen, but it's a technique specimen. And then you have somebody like, taking Bronson out because Bronson was only blue belt, but putting somebody like Buchecha now, Buchecha that is a physical specimen, conditioned as an athlete, that can roll hard and use strength throughout the entire roll. And you are going to be somewhere in the middle, and you have to be honest. It's like, okay, am I closer to this where I can, through training, I can use strength and be athletic throughout my entire roll and pair proper strength, proper pushing with proper technique, then I'm over here. But if I'm the guy that, man, I'm probably like on the weaker side of the spectrum, and I need to learn to rely more on technique, then let's be honest and develop your game closer to another world champion like Hoyce Gracie.
So here's the question: how much does body type affect your game?
So body type, it depends on who you're rolling with and what you look like. Like for example, yesterday we were having a guy that kept trying to hit a Bravo choke, right? And he was trying to hit, and he's 5'6", 5'7", and he's trying to hit a Bravo choke on a dude that's like 6'2", 6'3". So as he's trying to hit the Bravo choke, the long guy, it's able to like fold in half and get his foot in and kind of like neutralize the move. And then he's like, what did I do wrong? I was like, you're trying to do a choke on a dude that's twice your size. You know?
Yeah.
That it's got you by almost a foot in length. You have to, when you're in the side of the spectrum, when you're small, like for example, like a small female like Brittany, we were talking about jiu-jitsu versus self-defense. And you need to be able to practice both, the concept of both. Brittany, when she shows up for a class, which she's like barely 5 feet tall, maybe 5'2", and she shows up for a class, and there's guys that are within her size, but still men that are stronger than her or bigger than her. The jiu-jitsu that she's going to practice is going to be one of self-defense, controlling, keeping people in guard, stopping guard passes, stopping smashes, stopping submissions. Does that make sense? And when you find yourself with somebody that is of equal size with you, that's your time to do jiu-jitsu, man. You know, that's your time to do jiu-jitsu. It's like I used to have a training partner that was 320 pounds. It was fun, but the script was always the same. The script was try not to get smashed, keep him butterfly, try to arm drag him, expose his back, take his back. That was it. Yeah. And it wasn't until I started rolling with people that were more my size, you know, like Philip Aguilar, like you, like other guys, like Bronson, where the weight is comparable enough where I can bet in bolo. I can go upside down. I can fold in half and not be afraid of additional 200 pounds of mass landing on top of my neck. You know. Yeah. So I think it has to do with all that, man. It's like, what role are you having? Yeah. You know, what does your opponent look like?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I guess I'd be interested, and we've talked about this before, but I think it's a good thing to bring up on the podcast, and for the people who listen and view this podcast who practice jiu-jitsu to understand there is no you're not going to get a medal for kicking the shit out of a 2-week white belt and you're approaching a purple or a brown, you know what I mean? Like, so I guess talk about that. Like, what's the etiquette?
Right. So that's
because we talk about strength.
That's a complicated topic, man. Because I wish that training was a little bit more uniform in jiu-jitsu at the worldwide level and even at the national level. But to me, I've always felt that if people want to come to jiu-jitsu, they've seen it, they've heard about it, they have a basic understanding. So my job is to get you to fall in love with jiu-jitsu and show you technique. I'm not really into the concept of convincing you why jiu-jitsu is one of the most dominating forces, martial arts in the world, So if you're coming to the gym, which when the guy does that, when a guy comes into the gym to go, I'm going to try to dominate the coach. You can see that, and then when that happens, man, I usually oblige, like if the guy's going really hard at me, I'll sweep him, I'll hold him, I'll put pressure on them, and I'll get him to tap out of like not knowing how to breathe when you're fighting, that kind of deal. But to say that, especially the coach, to say that you should have an agenda of whooping somebody, especially a new student, into believing into jiu-jitsu, I don't believe in that, man. I think people already believe in it. They're just trying to understand it better. That's why they sign up. That's why they're paying. So if we're talking about an etiquette of how to treat the new guy, is it's kind of hard.
Maybe not necessarily as a coach.
Right, but so it's kind of hard because, like, you need to have had that experience, right? Like, think about like being in high school and walking into football for the first time or wrestling the first time, Think about, try to understand how intimidating that is, Try to figure out how intimidating that is and how hard it was to just take that first step to show up to practice. That was hard enough. And then from there to take an ass whooping and have a sense of humiliation. I don't think that's the best way to do it, man. You know, but a lot of times I think that certain people rewrite their history, and they're tough now, you know, because you're brown belt, a purple belt, a black belt, and you get off on like kicking somebody's ass when they're new and stuff, you know. I think that you should be more towards like your academy should have, like we do, you should have a fundamentals class where you acknowledge how nervous that person is. And I don't want you fighting. Listen, if you want to fight, if you're dying to fight and to prove and to figure out if jiu-jitsu is that effective, okay, by all means, man, I'll oblige. You know, let's roll, I'll sweep you, I'll get on top of you, I'll drop my weight on you, you won't be able to breathe, then you tap, and then you're like, oh my God, I believe in jiu-jitsu. But so somebody that goes, okay, this and that, this person, which is majority of jiu-jitsu practitioners, man, they've gone the entire life without doing any kind of combat sport. So that means they went through their teens, through their early adulthood, and now they're starting to be like in their early 20s, mid 20s, maybe even 30s, and all of a sudden now they're starting to do jiu-jitsu. You have to know how to treat those people, man. Yeah. And to those guys, I don't want them rolling. I want them doing fundamentals. Learn jiu-jitsu. Yeah. What's the point of me throwing you into a fight when you absolutely don't know any jiu-jitsu? Yeah.
And the fundamentals class is huge because we didn't have that when we started.
Right.
Like there wasn't an option like, hey, you know nothing, go to this class and learn how to fall on your back, right? Or learn how to shrimp, or learn what this is, what when I say side control, this is what it means. Without
the impending doom that in 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Because that's usually what you see them, and like people ask you, they're like, hey, what is this class? How's class structured? And you're like, 30 minutes to this, 30-minute warm-up, 30-minute technique, 30-minute fighting. And you see them, man, like they're rolling and they're doing the condition and they're like, fuck. Yeah. You know? And 7 o'clock comes across, you know, for the night class, and then now they're like, shit, we're fighting, you know? Yeah. Yep. So I think you got to have a project or a program that allows people to grow, you know, have a fundamental program, throw them in there, let them grow. There's always going to be those wild savages animals, man, that are like, I want to brawl, you know, but even then carry them, you know, you put it with somebody that's not going to smash them. And even then, like, I think as a coach, man, coaches shouldn't tolerate, the gym enforcer role, you know. Should you have gym enforcers? Yes. And what I consider a gym enforcer is this. As I've gotten older, maybe I can't roll every single day. 2 shoulder surgeries, 1 knee surgery, you know, a fused wrist. Yeah, nothing. Yeah. But I might not be at the top shape every single day. Yeah. So if I have a young kid that says, hey, I want to try out your class, I have some experience, and I want to feel your brand of jiu-jitsu, that's when you're going to convince somebody. And that's your gym enforcer. That's when you say, Ruben, Joshua, Elias, Bronson, go roll with this guy. Yeah. You know, that's your gym enforcer. Somebody that can say, okay, this is an example of what our jiu-jitsu feels like. Yeah. You know, and not negatively to where, like, you know, go beat them up, but go show them. They're
solid, but they're safe.
They're solid, but they're safe. Exactly. And same thing. It's like when you have the guy that walks in and goes, I don't know anything, but I want to experience jiu-jitsu. Because what I do, for example, you know, we have a lot of law enforcement in our academies, and a lot of those guys, as crazy as it sounds, law enforcement guys have never been in a fight. Maybe once or twice in junior high, you know? So for those guys, they understand the urgency of getting comfortable in violence. And that's what jiu-jitsu is. Think about like your first couple of practices in jiu-jitsu. If I had you roll with somebody for 2 minutes and then I stopped and I asked you, tell me what happened for the past 2 minutes, you'd be like, fuck, I don't know, man.
I shook hands.
And
then I'm here.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And the concept of being comfortable in violence, which is through inoculation, through repetitive exposure to violence that jiu-jitsu is, later on, a few months into it, I have you roll for 2 minutes and then I ask you what happened. Well, I went for a scissor sweep. The guy overstepped. We ended up scrambling. I was able to recover leg lasso. Whoa! All of a sudden, these 2 minutes that used to be full and filled with chaos and fear and nervousness, now it's clarity. Now it's like it's not. It wasn't just I'm trying to survive. Now it was like I have sufficient technique to start going for something.
Yeah.
You know.
So I tell people all the time, and they're like, "Oh, you do jiu-jitsu," and you know, I want to get my girls into it. And I say, if there's one sport that your kids should be in, especially your little girls. If I had a little girl, it'd be jiu-jitsu. And what I also tell my friends who are in law enforcement is, if there's one thing you need to be doing as a cop, it's jiu-jitsu.
Jiu-jitsu.
Right? As a firefighter, we do it, but it's not like our lives. We show up and people are happy to see us.
And a lot of times, you know, and it's just the way it's set up, and it should be, because you guys, number one, are not armed.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, by the time the firefighters show up, the scene is secured.
Yeah.
You know, where there's no hostiles in the area, and you're able to focus. Because if you guys see, if the public was to be able to see and understand how firefighters work around a patient, whether it's a suspect or whether it's a victim, is all eyes are there. Yep. You know, when cops are talking to somebody, whether it's a victim, whether it's a random person, it's like, you're this, man. You're talking, you're always looking, because you're a target.
Yeah. I tell the guys all the time, just because I came from a law enforcement background first, and I'm always like, man, we rush in way too quick. Like, I rush. I'm standing when the door opens. I know which way the door is going to open if I'm at someone's house. I don't care. It could be for a stub toe. Someone's going to shoot me, right? That's what I'm thinking. And then once I get in, I'm like, who's here with you? Oh, no, it's just me. Okay, and I'm still looking around corners. And I think if you don't have that experience, I remember starting jiu-jitsu with you. And I don't know. Tell me if you remember this, but I got in a fight with a probationer who was going for a gun, and it was literally like so I'm running, I'm grabbing the back of his neck, he's reaching for a gun that's hidden under a pillow in his room. We're getting a fight. I finally subdue him. I get him cuffed, but in that fight, I'm controlling wrist. You know, he's going for my weapons. I know that it's there, and it's those things that we had went over. Right, because when I first started, you knew I was in probation, so we kind of went over those things. And
right.
We took
things to
someone
keep in mind,
who I'm
right.
not going to name who does some cool shit, and we did some stuff, right? Controlling your weapon, controlling things like that, and I honestly feel like that saved my life as a law enforcement officer. So I tell them, if there's one thing you should do, is jiu-jitsu, because you don't want your first street fight. And we talked about this yesterday. I was like, man, I kind of miss street fights, right? Like for me, I think I fought so much in my life, whether it be boxing or here, that the only thing that makes sense in my life is when you're in combat with someone. Like, there's only X amount of things that can happen. But out here, you know, like there's all these variables, job changes, but in there it's pure, man.
Yeah. Dude, but that was so crazy because you said I miss street fights, and I was like, why? You know what I mean? Because as a cop, those things happen. The fights happen. You know, when you're unfortunately, you know, there's somebody commits a felony or a domestic violence issue, you have to physically book him to a penal county jail. A lot of times, you know, a misdemeanor problem is resolved. Everybody's going to go their own separate way. Here's your summons to court. You write them a ticket. They go their way. You don't really have to go hands-on with them, you know. Yeah. But when those fights happen, man, like you talk about it, like there were those fights, and then at the end of it, when you get back to your car and there's nobody else around, and it's just you and your thoughts, you're like, man, I could have died in that one. That one was close.
Yeah.
You know, there were elements where it could have gone really, really bad.
Yeah.
But it brought me back, like when you're talking about like getting in fights as a little kid, man. Like, you know, you were like, it was cool. We got in fights, and I remember my uncles trying to get me in fights.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. You know, because it was like that, man. Like, this is Mexico in the 1980s, man, and it was fucking primal.
Yeah.
You know, like I remember visiting my uncle who passed away, and he was an animal, man. He ruled as a god. He used to be a black belt under some kickboxing karate style under Chuck Norris, and he had a mean like sidekick. Like I saw him drop dudes with a sidekick. Yeah. So for a Mexican in the 1980s and the 70s to throw a sidekick was like, this dude is an animal. You know, this dude is trained. He's a killing machine. So, and I was just like this soft little city boy, you know, but you know, that fucking loved food, and I was fat, and I remember like my parents sent me to visit the extended family in Sonora, and my uncle was like, "You're kind of a pussy. Let's go get you in a fight." And dude, I was eating, surprised, and I was like, "Why?" It is like, "Because you're kind of a pussy." You know what I mean? And I was like, "No,
I don't want to.
I don't want to." And he like opens the door and he's like, "Let's go. You're gonna go fight this kid." And I kind of like look to the outside and there's some kid fucking like shadow boxing and stuff. I was like, "No, I'm not gonna go fight that kid. I don't even know. Why would I fight him?"
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. Well, for me, it started, and like we talk about kids being puppies, right? So I was in Catholic school, and there was this kid that just kept picking on me, and I was like, "Man, Dad, this kid's picking on me." And he was like, "You better handle it, or else everybody's gonna find out that you're a little punk, and they're gonna pick on you." So one day he decided to push me, and he pinched me because I was fat too. Well, I took him down, and I got on top of him, and I just was beating him, boom, boom. So it's like first grade, right?
were you crying? Because that's what you do when you're a little kid.
Yeah. You're like, I don't know if I'm gonna get in trouble. So the nuns pull me off, because it was Catholic school. The nuns take me, and they're calling me all this stuff, and my parents come down, and they're in the office, and I'm sitting outside, and I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna get my ass beat, I'm gonna get my ass beat, and the nuns are like, your son's a demon, we don't want him back. And we drive back, and we had this big ass Dodge Dart. It was like a boat. So my mom and dad they're in the front, and they're just talking, and my mom's talking all this shit, and my dad's just quiet, as he always is. Lil, I'll handle it. Just wait till we get home. Lil, stop it. We get home, and he pulls up to the thing. And I'm like, wow, he's gonna get down and beat me. And he puts it in park, and he goes, stay back there. Lil, get off. I need to talk to my son. She was like, you better handle this. I don't want him acting like this at school. He got kicked out of Catholic school. And then, so she gets off, she walks in, and he looks back, and he was like, you want ice cream? It was the most fucked up mind thing ever. And I'm like, yeah. And he was like, you just saved me a lot of money. And then we went and we ate, and he was like, don't ever let anyone put their hands on you without any repercussion. But that clicked to me, and I'm like, okay. Good things happen when I get in fights.
Right. So it programmed you. Yeah.
It programmed me to fight. And I mean, when you're fat, it's just it's either you're gonna let it happen, or you're gonna be like, fuck this. Whether you get beat up or not.
Dude, I remember being so afraid of a fight, just petrified of fighting. And I had already been in one fight, which is again this uncle that was trying to get me in fights in Sonora. He went and visited us in Guadalajara, and this is Michael Jackson, like Thriller era, right? Like Bad, I think it was.
Yeah. When he made good music.
Yeah. Michael Jackson never made any good fucking music, dude.
Just finish with your story,
dude. So he bought this glove with like the stud, like diamond looking things,
Thug.
And so my parents sent me to the store. So in Guadalajara, or in Mexico, it's very common that neighborhoods will have a house that sells stuff out of their house. So you don't go like to Costco, you don't go to Fry's, you go to the neighbor, and they have a small storefront in their house. So they sent me for something there. And my uncle sees the store owner's son, who was this big old fat kid. His name was Horacio. And fucking asshole, man. And he's like, he bullies me in front of my uncle, dude. So my uncle, he's like, come here. And he takes me back to the house, and he shows me how to throw a 1-2. And we were there for like 20 minutes, just throwing a 1-2 and throwing a 1-2 and throwing a 1-2. And then he's like, put your hand out. And he puts the glove on me.
Yes.
Which my hand is swimming, so I have like 2 fingers in one hole. And he's like, make a fist. And he goes, we're going to go down to the store, and when that kid bullies you, you're going to punch him. And I had confidence. Because I was like, I want to throw 1-2. So we go to the store.
Michael Jackson glove on.
Absolutely, man. So we go to the store, and this kid comes out, and I look back at my uncle. My uncle, like, fucking, he does that look, and I look back, dude, and I throw 1-2, and I hit the kid. And he falls on his ass, and then his eyes roll back, and he hits the back of the head on the wheel of a car that was parked. So I was like, fuck, I killed him. So I start crying, and I take off running. Everybody screams. The dad comes out, and now the dad is chasing me, and my uncle knocks him out. Well, it's cool, but 2 days later, my uncle's gone. So now I'm left alone to, number one, to deal with like this fight in the neighborhood that my parents knew nothing about. Then I'm left to myself to deal with the son and the dad. But dude, my parents are like, "Hey, go buy something." I was like, "Fuck, man!" I start sweating, dude. I start sweating. I'm like, "God damn it, man!"
Yeah.
You know. So we used to live at like house, like it was like a 2-story house. I go down to the bottom. I start throwing my 1-2s, trying to remember the combination. I'm like, I'm fucking it up. I know it, but all right, let's go, man. So I'll go to the store, and I see the kid, and the kid is like, "Hey," you know, and I was like, "Hey," I was like, "Cool." Go into the store, and the dad is like, "Hey, that uncle of yours is still in town?" And I was like, "Yeah, he moved in with us." Dude, and the guy goes, and I was buying eggs, I think, and I was buying like 6 eggs or a dozen eggs or something like that, and he throws like an extra 3, and he goes, "On the house." And I was like, "Cool, dude." And they never mess with me, but years went by, and like I said, I was petrified of that physical confrontation. Mm-hmm. So same thing. I went to Catholic school, elementary, and this kid is fucking bullying me, dude. And school's let out, so all these kids and cars are, you know, it's a mess. It's a traffic jam, and I'm to the front, and this kid is just fucking with me. I'm fucking with me, man. So in the logic of like a 9-10-year-old kid, I was so afraid of punching, of throwing punches, that I was gonna get hurt, or I was gonna get something, you know, something bad was gonna happen. So the best alternative that I could come up with was I was gonna push him into traffic and get him run over.
Your logic when you're a young kid is,
which you can tell with the logic has carried on to this day. So, dude, so that's also when you start. I think there's moments in your life when you realize how strong you are, mm-hmm. and that's when I realized that I was a strong kid, because I shoved him, and every time I shoved him, this kid would fall back like 4 feet, and he would get back to his feet, and I'd be like, boom, and he would fall back, and he was like trying to throw a punch, and I would put my head down, and dude, lo and behold, dude, almost got him run over. I almost got him run over, and then like a dad like scooped me up, and like a nun grabbed him, and now the kid is like petrified, and they bring us to the same thing, to the nun, and and I can't remember exactly what happened. I didn't get in trouble, I didn't get suspended or anything like that, but that kid never fucked with me again.
Yeah, but here's a perfect example. People go through their lives, and now they're in the law enforcement career,
right?
Never being in any confrontation like that where they have to defend themselves. That's why this is perfect, right? It's controlled. You will be safe. You will be trained. So in that moment when your life depends on it, now it's not, I don't know what happened, right? It's, I know what happened. He reached for this. He went for a gun. I was able to, you know what I mean?
The clarity in conflict, man. Dude, but there's something that the majority of the public doesn't understand, which is the idea that you can put on a uniform and a badge, and the way people treat you, mm-hmm. it changes. Yeah. It 100% changes. Whether it's an automatic assumption of like respect and honor, like when people trust you coming into their homes or whatever it is, or where like you get subpoenaed to court and you're a stand-up citizen. You know, now you're this stand-up human being with unwaverable character. You know, mm-hmm. which is what a courtroom testimony is. Like, we trust you that what you say is true. That also implies that as soon as you put that uniform on, that badge, you go in the hood, you are automatically hated. And there is a real sense of threat. Like, you are in danger because what you're wearing.
Yeah. We talked about this yesterday. Like, my first day at probation, we get in the truck, and I'm with my training officer who I was gonna be with in Shadow. And it's this dude that retired from the sheriff's office, getting another working at probation now, getting some extra money, and he was this old salty dude, big old mustache, and he gets in, and I sit down next to him, and he was like, "Listen, I don't care where you're from, I don't care your past experience, I don't care that you're Mexican and I'm not. Now that you have that badge on," and he hit me in my plate, in my armor, and he hit the badge, and he was like, "They're gonna hate you." And I wanted him to be wrong, and we went in the exact neighborhood I grew up in. The way people looked at me, they hated me, man. And so I think that was an eye-opener as to the stigma that people have for law enforcement and how hard the job really is as an officer, you know what I mean, and how dangerous it is as well.
Yeah, and I think law enforcement is still trying to figure it out, man. I think that right now, it's law enforcement is trying to humanize itself, and you see them making like lip sync videos or just trying to show that officers are part of the community. They're human beings, you know. I think it's a little bit misguided, man. I think our efforts, like, should there be a better communication between the public and law enforcement? Absolutely, man. We need to be part of that community. We need to have connection with that community. But I don't think I need to be in uniform playing basketball with the kids.
Yeah.
I don't. We don't need that, man. We need events where you can grab a unit that is like a community outreach unit, and you can have those guys do those things, and you think you can pull people from. I think you can pull people from different units, like to say, hey, let's teach this young kid that just signed up to be a cop that he's also part of this community. I think that when you become, my experience, what I saw for many years is that it creates a culture of it's not whether it's right or wrong, but it's also a competition. How many arrests did you make? How many times did you go into the Pima County Jail? I had this guy, man, that I remember. He was so proud that the fact that in this first week or in his first day or something like that, within the first week of him being hired as a cop, he booked 7 people into the Pima County Jail. When none of my trainers were kind of focused on that. So my trainers, I had phenomenal trainers, man, that had an incredible moral compass, where, I've always talked about this, man. I had this guy that told me this, and I always carry that with me. He said, when you have a badge, you have the ability to take somebody's liberty away. You have the ability, the right, the power to take somebody's property away. And he goes, you have the right and the duty sometimes to take somebody's life away, to protect somebody else's life. What you're not entitled to do is to take somebody's dignity away, which is sometimes the last thing that they have, And sometimes, man, you get caught up in those situations where it's not about being right or wrong or doing the right thing, but it turns into a competition of us versus them, And sometimes you lose vision, man. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I've never lost vision in 15 years of law enforcement. And you do lose vision of that. You do get into, like, those competitions of, like, how many driving suspended license, how many misdemeanors I can write, how many felonies I can do this, and this and that. Where I think that when you throw more of a human interaction in it, where it's, what can I do to fix somebody's life? If it's within my power, yes. Do I have to book somebody because they're in possession of heroin? Absolutely. It's a 20-minute ride to the Pima County Jail. How are you going to treat them? What can I say to this person? A lot of times there's nothing to say. A lot of times this person has lost their humanity, and there's absolutely nothing to say to them. But a lot of times, man, you're the last king of hope, because number one, believe it or not, a lot of times criminals do respect law enforcement. They do envy that you are this pristine member of the society. That you don't have debilitating addiction that has forced them to destroy everything in their life. They envy that, and they'll look to you to be like, they won't say it, but they're saying it, like, fucking say something that'll change my life.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always happen, but you have to recognize when you have the ability to make that challenge, to change, to try to have a positive influence on somebody,
Yeah. Yep.
But
so 15 years.
15 years, man.
And
well, so I 15 years with the police department and 3 with the Department of Corrections, so a total of 18.
So now you're full-time committed to jiu-jitsu.
Full-time committed to jiu-jitsu. And it's weird, man. It's weird because pretty much since I was outside of the gate of being a kid, like I was 20 years old when I got the call to be a correctional officer. So from there I was with the corrections for 3 years, the Department of Corrections. So since I was a young adult, a teen, a young adult, I worked a uniform and a badge,
Mm-hmm.
and been in that sort of role, and to not have that anymore, it's a weird. I almost feel guilty. Like, am I doing something wrong? You know, like I don't have a job anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like I have a higher calling with jiu-jitsu, but yeah, it's weird to have walked away from it.
Yeah, you know, sometimes I think about, well, in your situation, and then we have guys at our department, our fire department's getting to the part where guys are starting to retire now, right? And this guy, he retired a couple of days ago. They call him, I won't even say his name. But anyway, he got to the end, and his last day, they were asking him, like, I think it was the morning, he was coming off shift. They're about to dispatch, his last dispatch, you know?
Yeah.
And they were asking him, they were like, man, like, how are you feeling right now? And he was like, I'm conflicted. He's like, there's half of me that's excited, and there's half of me that's scared to death. Like, what am I gonna, like, I've been in this role for 25 years. That's
his identity.
Yeah, like that. And on top of that, you know, we talk about, you as in law enforcement, you guys, you know, you guys baker up sometimes where you have a partner with you, you get to talk. Most of the time you guys are alone, you know, and so, which is hard. In our case, we got 6, 7 guys around us, you know,
they're always
for 24 hours. And I know my crew right now, just as a result of having to bury one of our crew members, we're really close. So I couldn't imagine, he doesn't have a wife, he doesn't have kids. So what's his life now? What's going to be his life purpose? This is down. You know, right now I'm 34 and I have 6 years in, and I'm like, man, I just wish I could just jujitsu, chill, and do hood rat things with my friends. You know what I mean? But you know, who knows? 25, 30 years down the line, when I'm in his position and I'm about to get my last dispatch, how I'm gonna be feeling? Probably the same way: excited, scared, nervous. But with you here now, you kind of have this new challenge, which is this new gym and some other things down the line. So it seems like you kind of
you know, it just got to the point where I just wasn't happy, man. I had done what I wanted to do in law enforcement, and it just wasn't happy, man. It got to the point where it's a very dangerous thing to feel, but I was dreading to go to work. You know, it was that Sunday afternoon where, you know, you have a couple more hours but you have to go to sleep, and the next morning you have to go to work. I remember the first feeling of being law enforcement. I remember it was almost like a ceremony. It was very ceremonial to me, man, knowing that, for example, my best shift, my best years being in Squad 10 in Midtown, 2003, was I used to go in at 6 p.m. and at about 4:30, you start getting ready. You start putting your duty belt together. You start putting your uniform together, your badge, you shine your shoes, and you start seeing that mindset starting to change, where you start putting your uniform on before you leave your house and you start driving to work, and you start thinking about work. You start thinking about your 100 blocks. You start thinking about procedures. You start thinking about your laws. You know, you start thinking about what went right your last shift, what went wrong the last shift, you know, the shift, what you need to work on today, what you would like to do in today's shift. You know, like for me, I love to be involved with narcotics arrest, so it was always very exciting to be able to go in, clear the board. And when I say clear the board, is the 911 calls. You know, go in, write your report, start to clear the board, and if it allows us to go start hunting. You know, and when I say start hunting, there is truly people that are absolutely committed and dedicated to a life of crime. Yeah. That there is no redeeming qualities for this people and the way what they do to Tucson. What they want is it's crime. They want drugs. They want narcotics. They want violence. They want to further that lifestyle. They want that instant gratification. You know, and you go hunting for those people and you try to remove them from your community. So, though that feeling lasted for many years, man. That feeling lasted for many years, and then got promoted to sergeant, and now I wanted to be that sergeant that I had, that allowed me to grow and that allowed me to make mistakes, chewed my ass, but didn't tie my hands. You know, that allowed me to keep growing. And then what ended up happening was Gabe Cordova from Sharks said it the best. My issue was I had a passion for jiu-jitsu that it wasn't just a hobby, it was a passion. And we opened the academy 8 years ago, and that started growing. And we started being so successful in our academies where we were competing, our student body was growing. And as when it grows, you start becoming more involved in these people's lives because they're doing privates, because they're starting to grow, they're starting to compete. So you have to be more involved over here. And the way Gabe Cordova said the best, my passion outgrew my 9 to 5. And what was once my passion of law enforcement became my 9 to 5. And tell me somebody that loves the idea of 9 to 5. Nobody does.
Yeah.
Nobody does. When 9 to 5 is a passion, you'll do it. But when it stops being a passion, it becomes a 9 to 5, then it dies, you know? And unfortunately for me, man, it just got to that point where it died. And I was lucky enough to have a beautiful family, a beautiful wife, Brenda, that within the last couple of years of me being in the police department, where I would come to her and be like, I'm not happy, you know? Dude, she was doing numbers, she was doing stuff unbeknownst to me to prepare ourselves or to prepare us for me to say, I don't want to do this anymore. And when it came down to that point where I said, I don't want to do this anymore, she was like, you don't have to. We're financially stable to where we can do, our passion allows us to do this, you know? So I was listening to this podcast by Gary Vee, and Gary Vee said it. He talks about passion, how your life needs to be driven by passion, you know? And he said, when you no longer have, when you're not passionate about something, it's your time to leave. If you're doing something you're not passionate about, it's just fucking stop doing it.
Yeah.
Go do something else, man. And there should be no shame of not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
There's no shame in that.
And that's huge. Like, especially in what me and you do.
Right.
You know, what you did. Law enforcement, when you're not passionate about it, your head's not in the game, it's dangerous for you, it's dangerous for your partners, it's dangerous for your community. Same thing in the fire service. If you're not passionate, if you're a medic and you're not passionate about medicine, you're not passionate about, you know, firefighting, and now you become complacent. You know, our saying is complacency kills, right? Like, hey man,
and complacency gets you killed.
Yeah. Just find, if you do have something, go do it, man. Because life is pretty short. So it's, I guess for me, it's pretty cool to see that you've went through those years, and I guess because our lives are kind of similar in the sense, you know, like, built this career, you got jiu-jitsu, you got other things that you're good at and you're passionate about. So it's exciting to see now to have you full-time, you know, what's to come and what's to go from it. So
and that's what I'm excited, man. I'm excited about what the future looks like, man. I'm excited to continue to grow the academy, continue to grow the students, continue to grow the Last Warrior Standing, to continue to support other tournaments like the old Pueblo, you know, whatever other thing. I think that we vote with our students, you know, and if a certain league up in Phoenix starts doing stuff that I don't believe in, guess what? We vote with our students, man. We tell them we don't want that. We don't believe in that, you know? So then we gear our students towards something else, you know? So I'm excited about that, man. It's the life is it's full of opportunities, man. You just gotta be willing to work hard, you know? And that's and to quote Mario Sperry, you know, because it was so funny, man. I think you and I have talked a lot about, like, Mario Sperry, what a huge influence that was. But it was funny because it was an influence that started watching him on TV, you know, like when he used to fight in Pride and, like, the short interviews here and there. And to now have him in my living room, like, we're eating, you know, and stuff, and he's talking, I'll be like, that's Mario Sperry, you know?
Groupie.
Yeah, dude, you know, and you know, and I do the same thing with, like, whoever we've had, you know, like, but, like, Frangina and stuff. But Mario has this quote, man. He goes, we were booking privates for him, you know, and he was kind of like, and he's coming from Florida. So the hour differential, right? The time zone, the flight, the time to check into the airport, the flight from Florida to Tucson, the drive, book him into hotel, stuff like that. That meant that this guy had to be up and out the door by 3 a.m. on Friday, right? we had privates booked all Friday for him, and he had the seminar the next day. And he got here, and the dude, first of all, has like this perfect stature, like fucking chin up, and his shoulders are back, and he always has his fist clenched. Not in a menacing way, but in a way that he's always facing life. There's no better way to describe it.
Yeah.
And he never asked for water. He never asked for food. But I was with him throughout this entire thing, right? So he got here, and I was like, Mario, are you thirsty? Can I get you some water? Why? Are you thirsty? Fuck. No.
I'm being polite.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm not thirsty. All right. I'm not getting you water. So then we start doing privates and stuff, and now I'm starving. And I know he hasn't eaten. Mario, are you hungry? Why are you hungry? Fuck, no. Fuck you then. I'm not going to feed you. Dude, this guy was a monster, man. And at the end of the day, what we're talking about was like, I was like, hey, man, that's phenomenal that you were able to do all this privates and the seminar and stuff like that. And he goes, I'm not afraid to work. I've never been afraid to work. And to hear somebody that it's, that it's that passionate, that driven at his age, man, if I can mirror even 10% of that effort and that discipline at my age, fuck, man.
But here's the question. Was he working?
He was doing what he loved.
Yeah.
He was doing absolutely what he loved. And you could see that, man. He has a passion that inspire me. And I would like to consider myself a very passionate person, the way I teach and the way I fight and the way I coach. But I love it, man. And I'm never tired, and I never tired, and I always, and I never turn down a role.
Yeah.
I never turn down a role. I'm always ready to go. And that's because you're doing what you love.
Yeah. I can see it, and this is going to sound weird, but I think it's just because I've known you for such a long time, and I've seen you throughout your career, and I've seen you throughout the growth of the academy. But I could see your body changing. I could see your facial expressions changing. I could see your energy changing. Things that you regularly didn't, might have been like now you're able to see it differently. We're having different conversations about things, and I think it's just because you're loving, you're at a different, you're loving life. You know what I mean? You love being here. It's not like, man, I just work 9 to 5, and
I've been on the sun all day.
Shit on for by my bosses. I got I dealt with shitty people. I dealt with whatever politics are going on in city council. And I come here, and you still gave it your all. I'm not downplaying that. I'm just saying, once you were rid of that, and you were able to do what you loved, it was cool to see it. It's like I said, envious in a sense to see that, but it's also energizing for me, and energizing for everyone else, and energizing for the school.
Right.
I'm sure now the kids have more time with you.
Yeah, man. We spent so much time together. Yeah, dude, it's been phenomenal, man. It's been phenomenal. It's been a phenomenal change. And I just when people ask me how are things going, do you miss it? It's like I miss knowing that I've done something to make this world better, like the community, Yeah. And I miss the stories, I miss the guys, I miss the chemistry with like the squads and stuff like that with your coworkers. But it's been hugely replaced by now this,
Yeah.
Is I love coming to class and see, here in Twin Peaks, I love to see the people park and I get to see them walk up with carrying their geese,
Yeah.
And I love it, man. I love to be able to like kick him in the ass, and be like, all right, man, let's have some passion for life,
Yeah.
And let's go, and you see that, man, and you see like I was giving a speech the other day, talking about mindset for competition, dude, and Fidel, like one of our white belts, he was fucking ready to stab somebody. And you could just see him where he was like energized, man. Like he was like, "Fuck yeah, this resonates with me."
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
I get to do it in this way, man. And like I said, I feel guilty of how happy and blessed I am.
Yeah.
And I don't take it for granted one bit. And I'm grateful and dude, and I'm ready to keep growing, man. I'm ready to keep growing, and I'm ready, and I hope that it inspires people, man. I want more people opening up academies.
Yeah, I mean, look at Philip.
Yeah,
he opened up at his, and I think I talked to him after, and he was excited about it. Which, by the way, I'm glad he opened it up. Because, Philip, you were a shitty phone salesman.
Was he?
Bro, he was horrible. The last phone he sold, I'm like...
Well, I like how he got us both into AT&T.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he left AT&T, he was like, man, they're shit. And he goes to like another phone company.
Yeah.
I was like, bro, what the fuck? You have me on a contract.
Yeah.
And you swore that AT&T was the best.
Yeah. So he boned me. So I'm glad he got into my own cousin.
Yeah.
By the way. Which we need to have him on this podcast. And let's just wrack on him the whole time.
Okay. Philip Aguilar, you're next.
But I mean, same thing. He opened up, he was like, hey, I'm done doing this. I'm gonna go do what I love, and it's growing now. So you are having that effect on people. And
talk about like that choice, right? Because I remember, so like without like throwing too much of his personal life out there, man. Like he was laid off, and he had a date where like it was like you will be unemployed as of today.
Not a result of his actions.
No, not a result of his actions, but it was just downsizing. But he was like, okay, this is coming. So what do we do? And I was like, well, dude, this could be the greatest opportunity in your life, you know, or you could just plug back into the machinery somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And dude, we had a few talks, man, and dude, and look at him, man. He's so successful with this new academy.
Yeah.
And he's doing what he loves.
Yep.
And that's what fucking matters, man.
Yeah.
That's what matters, man. Like this life is about doing and that's what I don't completely appreciate about religion. I think that religion makes you not be passionate about life, and I'll tell you why. I think that when you don't follow a certain religion and you kind of like form the idea like, dude, man, you are in this rock that is slinging through space, right? And the space it's unpredictable. We could run into, the sun could burp and now we're baked. You could run into a field of asteroids. Like they have specifically calculated that mass extinctions in Earth have occurred as the Earth wobbles up and down the stellar arm of the Milky Way where we're in. Mm-hmm. So as we go through the middle of the cloud, we end up running into a bunch of shit that fucking kills everything that's alive on Earth. Mm-hmm. So if you subscribe to the idea that you only have one ticket in life, that's it, man. There's no reincarnation, there's no heaven, there's no hell. This is it. What do you want to do with it? You're here for 70, 80 years. What are you going to do with it, man?
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes with people, they're like, well, I have heaven and eternity. What if you don't?
Yeah.
Bank on this life. Make this life exciting. Make it happen in this one, man.
Today. And I think we see it. We saw it in our jobs, and I still see it every day. A healthy individual, young in life, dead. Walking with kids somewhere.
Dead.
Having a good time. Gone.
Right.
We're all gonna die at some time.
And then you go to the funeral, like, he always wanted to do this, and I'm like, fuck, why he didn't do it?
Yeah, same when my dad died. I'm like, man, he fucking worked his ass off. Like, what the fuck did he do for him?
Right.
But, it, like, now, I could drive home right now, and it's done, right? And I could, honestly, if I'm taking my last breath, I'd be like, man, I had some great roles, I had some great laughs, I got to wake up. I showed little Ruben how to make eggs for the first time this morning. We did some push-ups together. Life is like, I did every single thing from this point on to when I drive out that I wanted to do. There's nothing is guaranteed, man. It really isn't. So if you're at that point where you're like, I've always wanted to do jiu-jitsu, like, should I do it? I'm scared. Am I gonna get beat up? Am I too out of shape? I'm fat. I'm unathletic. I'm ugly. Nobody cares. Just come in.
Just fucking do it, man.
Yeah, just live it.
The biggest tragedy that I saw when I was a cop, dude, was people that were dead in life. People that are just broken and they're not doing anything. They're just going through life.
Yeah. And
that's the biggest heartbreak, man. Like, where you're like, man, you fucking, I don't know what you need, man. Maybe you need some weed in your life and fucking you need like an existential awakening. I don't know, man.
I was watching, have you seen this, and I forget the name of it, but it's about, check it up on Netflix. It's a documentary about this sushi chef. Have you seen it?
Jiro?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you hear the part where he says, I have never once complained about doing my job.
Right.
Because something to the extent of, because it's my passion and I love doing it.
And after so many years, he's still trying to get the
perfect
best,
slice and
the perfect
sushi.
slice. He's still chasing that.
Yeah,
He's
imagine
still
if
chasing
he took
that.
Like I see people like the custodians, the janitors at the hospital,
Yeah.
and I was asking this lady the other day because she went in and cleaned it, and I was like, hey, I was talking to her in Spanish, and I'm like, do we always leave this dirty for you? And she was like, it doesn't matter to me. Like, I'm here to serve you guys. I want you guys to have a nice toilet. I want you guys to have nice things. And I love doing my job. And she was genuine about it, right? So who cares whether you're
what you're doing,
a multi-millionaire or you're the president sitting, you know what I mean? Like, perfect, like perfection, like
right.
be in the moment.
And don't look down. I think that's so important, man. Is don't look down at those formative years, man.
Yeah.
And even if that's where you're going to become, like if you're gonna be grilling burgers for life, grill the shit out of that burger,
Yeah,
man.
be the best burger
be the
griller.
best that you can at that, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's something weird in America, man. I don't know if it's a worldwide phenomenon, but I think that we look down on certain jobs. Like he's a janitor. What about if he takes a shit ton of pride in that?
Yeah.
What if he comes down and he's like, dude, I clean the shit out of this, and
Yeah.
and people are happy to be able to come and use this toilet.
Yeah.
That is not a weird concept of an idea to have. You know, people take pride in their jobs. Respect that. You know, let's not look down on people, man. So, dude, there's no better way of ending this, man.
Yeah.
That's it. So,
Pleasure.
Saturday, last warrior standing. It's gonna be phenomenal.
Yep.
So you're not gonna be there, but I think we're gonna try to get some videos, some fights.
Yeah.
We'll post them on the website. We'll have to do one talk about the fights, man. See how it went.
I want you to let Aiden know that he's there as a second choice.
He was not our choice.
Yeah, so he's definitely inferior
Got it.
to the first medic.
Thank you, sir.
Pleasure, brother.
Let's do this, man.